I want you to try and imagine something for a second. Like, really put yourself in this position. Imagine you spend maybe the absolute best years of your 20s and 30s just hunched over a lab bench.
Oh, or, buried in a dusty library archive somewhere.
Right, exactly. And you are sacrificing your sleep, your social life, whatever meager savings you have, all just to become an absolute master in a highly complex field.
Yeah, but a massive commitment.
It is. And then, you finally defend your dissertation, you get that PhD, you are officially at the absolute pinnacle of academic achievement.
Sounds great on paper. Yeah.
Right. But then you step out into the real world, diploma in hand, and you quickly find out that, well, society doesn't see you as a valuable asset at all.
Not even a little bit.
No. In fact, they view you as this overpriced, overqualified burden.
Which is just a devastating realization for anyone to face.
Yeah.
I mean, you follow the exact path that society laid out for you to become this elite innovator, and the moment you arrive, the doors just slam shut right in your face.
Yeah, which brings us perfectly to the core of today's deep dive. We're looking at a brand new government policy coming out of Japan.
Very ambitious policy, too.
Super ambitious. The government there has just announced this massive initiative to mint 20,000 PhD graduates every single year.
And, on a surface level, the logic there seems pretty straightforward.
Sure. Japan's research capabilities they've been slipping in global rankings over the last couple of decades. So the government's response is basically, hey, we need more research power. Let's just mass produce more researchers.
A classic numbers game.
Exactly. But today, we're going on a very specific mission. We're going to figure out why trying to brute force innovation with sheer numbers without fundamentally changing corporate culture is just a massive systemic misallocation of human potential.
Right. And our roadmap for this today comes from a fiercely critical presentation script by Dr. Kaori Kido.
Yeah, it's a great read.
It really is. It's titled The 20,000 PhDs Plan. Numbers games won't restore research power.
And what's great is she isn't just giving us dry educational policy.
Oh, definitely not.
No, she is dismantling this massive systemic failure from the inside out. She offers this really fascinating look at cultural clashes and honestly, it's a cautionary tale about the future of global innovation.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because to understand why this new plan for 20,000 PhDs is setting off alarm bells for experts like Dr. Kido, we actually have to get in a time machine.
Right, back to the ghosts of policy past.
Yeah, we have to go back about 20 years. So 2 decades ago, Japan was actually sitting pretty high in global research rankings.
Yeah.
But they have this creeping anxiety about keeping up with the U.S. and Europe in the long run.
So they launched a policy to create 10,000 postdoctoral researchers.
Right. The assumption being a flood of elite talent would permanently secure their spot at the top of the global food chain.
But it failed. It failed spectacularly.
Completely. Why was it such a disaster? Well, it was basically a perfect storm of bad timing and structural blindness. The policy launched right after the economic bubble had burst in Japan.
Oh, the employment ice age.
Exactly. So you had this period where corporations were aggressively slashing hiring across the board just to survive.
Okay, wait, I need to push back on this a little bit. Japan is a massive global economy. You have these tech and manufacturing giants, right? Massive R&D powerhouses.
They're household names.
Yeah. And you're telling me these companies looked at 10,000 newly minted elite scientists and just said, no thanks, we're not hiring. That doesn't make any economic sense. If you want patents and breakthroughs, you hire the smartest people in the room.
You would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But you really have to look at the mechanics of traditional Japanese corporate culture.
Okay.
It's built around this system of simultaneous recruitment for new university graduates.
Yeah.
Companies hire these giant cohorts of 22-year-olds straight out of their bachelor's degrees.
So like a blank slate approach.
Exactly. They train them internally, they mold them to this specific company culture, and then they promote them strictly based on age and seniority.
Okay. I see where this is going.
Right. So enter a newly minted PhD graduate. They're 27, 28 years old?
Yeah, roughly.
They completely break the HR spreadsheet. They're too old to be treated like a blank slate junior employee. But they completely lack the internal company experience to be a mid-level manager.
Right, because they've been in a lab for 5 years, not sitting in the corporate office.
Exactly. Plus, because they are older, the seniority-based pay scale dictates they should be paid more, even though the company views them as totally untested.
Wow. So the corporate sector didn't see them as specialized innovators. They saw them as difficult to manage, expensive disruptions.
Disruptions to their established harmony, yeah.
That is wild. I mean, the very expertise that makes a PhD valuable makes them structurally unemployable in that specific system.
It's a huge paradox.
So, okay, the private sector rejects this massive influx of talent. You would assume the universities that train them would step up and, absorb them into academia.
Well, they did absorb them, but in the most exploitative way possible.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Universities didn't create permanent, stable tenure-track jobs for these researchers. Instead, they basically invented an entire underclass of non-regular employment.
Using those specially appointed titles, right?
Yes. So you'd have a specially appointed professor or a specially appointed assistant.
Which, I mean, if you're handing out business cards at a conference, sounds incredibly prestigious.
Oh, it sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
But the reality, according to Dr. Kido's research, was that these were essentially low-paying, short-term temp jobs.
Wait, like how short term?
We were talking one-year contracts. They had virtually no job security and incredibly poor Social Security benefits compared to regular faculty.
Okay, let's dig into the why here. Why on earth would universities treat their brightest minds like seasonal temp workers?
It all comes down to how government funding works. The Ministry of Education gives out these massive grants to universities that can prove they are, quote, centers of excellence.
Okay, and how do you prove that?
To win those grants, a university needs to show massive research output and a really large staff on the application.
Ah.
So they take a chunk of the grant money, they hire 50 postdocs on one-year contracts, call them specially appointed.
Or work them to the absolute bone to produce papers.
Exactly. And then when the grant cycle ends in a few years, all those researchers are just let go.
Wow. They were just pawns, literally just names on a spreadsheet used to unlock government funding.
That's all they were.
It's like the government decided to build a massive state-of-the-art bullet train, build all the high-tech train cars, but totally forgot to lay down a single mile of track. They just pushed the train into the dirt and watched it crash.
That's a great analogy. And the human cost of that crash was just profound. Dr. Kido points out that because these researchers were stuck in this precarious cycle of temporary contracts, a lot of them fell into absolute poverty.
Because you can't plan your life on a one-year temp contract?
Right. They couldn't hit normal life milestones. When you don't know if you'll have a job next year, you certainly can't get a mortgage.
No bank is going to approve that.
Exactly. So you delay getting married, you delay having kids. Some of these brilliant minds just completely aged out of the system.
That's heartbreaking.
It gets worse. Tragically, some even went missing, just completely falling through the cracks of society.
And obviously, the younger generation was watching all of this happen in real time, right? Like, if you are a 20-year-old undergrad in Tokyo and you look at the 30-year-old postdoc in your lab.
Who is probably the smartest person you know.
Right. The smartest person you know, and they are living in near poverty with no future, you are going to run the other way.
Unsurprisingly, young Japanese students simply stopped applying to PhD programs.
Which brings us to a massive demographic puzzle. Because if the young domestic pipeline totally dried up because everyone saw the bullet train crash, who is actually sitting in the university lecture halls right now?
Someone has to be there.
Right. Somebody has to be making up the current number of roughly 15,000 PhDs graduating in Japan every year.
And this is where the new policy starts to look incredibly shaky. Because that demographic gap left by the disappearing young domestic students is primarily being filled by two distinct groups.
Okay, who are they?
International students and working professionals.
Okay, let's look at the international students first. Dr. Kido notes that in some private universities, international students actually make up the vast majority of the PhD candidates.
Which is a huge shift.
Yeah. Now, my first instinct is that international exchange is a good thing, right? Bringing global talent to your country is usually a net positive.
It is a net positive, yes, but only if you can actually retain them. Let's look at the funding structure here. In many of these cases, Japan is footing the bill.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the Japanese government or the universities themselves are covering the tuition and the living costs for these international scholars to come over.
Okay, so they're fully funded.
Right. And they do great research while they are in the lab, which, helps maintain Japan's technical output in the short term.
But the long-term return on investment is terrible, isn't it? Because Japan isn't retaining that talent.
Exactly. The compensation just isn't competitive. A brilliant international student gets their PhD, which, again, Japan paid for, and then they look at the job market. They see these low salaries and incredibly rigid corporate structures in Japan. So they take that degree and immediately leave for a high-paying job in Silicon Valley or Europe.
So the intellectual property, the future startups, the decades of innovation.
And that all just goes overseas.
Wow. So Japan is essentially running a publicly funded training camp for their global economic competitors.
Pretty much.
Okay, that is the first group. The second group filling these empty seats are working professionals or adult PhDs. And here is where it gets really interesting.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Yeah, Dr. Kido shares her own personal story about getting an adult PhD, and it just perfectly encapsulates the absurdity of the entire system.
It is a striking anecdote.
Yeah.
It reveals so much about how Japanese institutions view individual agency.
So to give you some background, Dr. Kido decides to get her PhD when she's over 50 years old. At the time, she's working full-time for an American company.
Right.
She applies to a Japanese university, gets accepted, and the university tells her, great, we just need a permission slip from your employer.
A permission slip, like a kid going on a field trip.
Literally, because in the Japanese university system, if you are a working adult getting a degree, the assumption is that your company is sponsoring you.
In fact, if you're unemployed, they don't even consider you a quote-unquote working adult eligible for this specific track.
Oh, which is crazy.
But think about the underlying philosophy there. The university system treats adult education almost as an extension of corporate ownership.
Oh, okay.
The individual isn't seen as pursuing intellectual growth for themselves.
Yeah.
They are doing it under the umbrella and with the explicit authorization of their employer.
Right. So she goes to her American bosses to get this signed, and they are completely baffled. They basically tell her, you are paying your own tuition out of your own pocket. You are doing this on your own time, on nights and weekends.
They couldn't wrap their heads around it.
No. They said, why on earth would we need to give you permission? Do what you want. They flat out refused to sign a formal permission slip because the very concept of authorizing an employee's personal weekend education made zero sense in their corporate culture.
It's a total clash of individualism versus collectivism.
Yeah.
In the U.S. model, your free time is yours. Do what you want.
Yeah.
But in the traditional Japanese corporate model, employee development is viewed as a corporate asset. If you're pursuing a massive undertaking like a PhD, and it's not explicitly authorized by the company, it's viewed almost like rogue behavior.
Like you're going off script.
Yeah, they worry it might distract you from your corporate duties.
It's so funny. She actually had to hunt down a Japanese director at a Singapore branch of her company, essentially begging him to sign this bureaucratic piece of paper just so she could enroll.
Unbelievable.
I mean, you have a national system that is desperate for innovation, completely paralyzed by its own need for a corporate permission slip.
And sadly, it gets worse. Because even when these working professionals do manage to enroll, balancing a full-time corporate job with rigorous academic research is grueling.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Dr. Kido notes that the dropout rate for adult PhDs is astronomically high.
And for those who do endure it and actually finish, you have to ask, what does the nation actually gain from it?
That's the real question. Because many of these adult professionals are just doing it to organize their past work, or maybe for personal fulfillment, or to get a fancy title for international consulting.
Right. It's essentially what used to be called a dissertation PhD, which I want to be clear is fantastic for them personally. Dr. Kido freely admits the title helped her immensely in international communication, but it isn't elevating the entire nation's baseline research power.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's not creating a new army of dedicated, full-time researchers working on the next, quantum computing breakthrough.
Right. So when the government sets a target of 20,000 PhDs, they are entirely blind to these demographics.
They're just looking at a raw number on a page.
Yeah.
They are completely ignoring that a huge percentage of that number are either taking the knowledge overseas immediately, or they are late career adults who won't be entering the lab full-time anyway.
So you have a system propped up by international students who leave and working adults exhausted by bureaucracy, and now the government wants to push that raw number even higher.
We can clearly see why this new push is basically driving the car right back off the exact same cliff as the 10,000 postdocs plan.
Exactly. Which brings us to Dr. Kido's core thesis, which is the fundamental corporate equation in Japan.
Yeah, she identifies a massive structural trap here. In the West, particularly in sectors like tech and pharma, the corporate mindset is essentially innovation value is greater than cost cutting.
Meaning, if you can invent the next big thing, the cost of an elite researcher's salary is basically irrelevant.
Exactly. But in Japan, that mindset has completely flipped. Due to decades of economic stagnation, corporate governance shifted really heavily towards shareholder returns and short-term cost efficiency. So the equation became cost-cutting is greater than innovation value.
But wait, how can that be? These companies still want to dominate global markets, right? They need the next big breakthrough to survive. How can they prioritize cost-cutting over the very people who invent things?
Because the corporate structure still views R&D as an assembly line process rather than an individual stroke of genius.
Oh, I see.
A PhD is seen as this over-specialized worker who demands higher pay, which, as we mentioned earlier, disrupts the egalitarian pay scale of the broader company. They don't want a lone genius who costs twice as much.
What do they want then?
They want 5 cheaper master's graduates who will just follow directions and incrementally improve an existing product.
Wow. So you're asking elite researchers to enter an economy that views them as a luxury expense to be minimized rather than an R&D engine to be unleashed.
That's exactly it.
I really want you, the listener, to imagine this. You have a newly minted PhD in, say, advanced materials science. You go to a Japanese corporation and they basically look at you and say, well, you're basically just an older master's graduate who is going to cost us more money.
Yeah, your salary gets set far below international standards.
And if the fundamental corporate ecosystem operates on that exact cost-cutting equation, dumping thousands of new PhDs into the market doesn't trigger an innovation boom.
No, it just creates a highly exploitable pool of cheap labor.
Yeah.
The oversupply just allows universities and companies to suppress wages even further.
And it is even worse if you're in the humanities. Dr. Kido points out that for humanities PhDs, the structural trap is basically inescapable.
Yeah, there are almost 0 career paths designed for them outside of academia.
Right. There's only so much room in national civil service or, specialized archives. The rest are thrown right into that exact same precarious temp worker meat grinder we talked about earlier.
The entire ecosystem is fundamentally hostile to the talent it claims to want to produce.
Okay, so we have thoroughly diagnosed the disease here. A numbers game without structural support just destroys research power. But Dr. Kido doesn't just complain, right? She provides an actual blueprint for real change.
She does.
So if we stop playing the numbers game, how do we actually fix the vessel?
Well, it starts with a complete paradigm shift. Quality over quantity. She argues that the government needs to abandon these arbitrary numerical targets entirely.
Just throw the 20,000 number in the trash.
Exactly. A PhD shouldn't be a decorative title or a quota metric to unlock a government grant. It needs to genuinely guarantee elite research capability.
Right.
That means implementing strict screening and focusing funding on cultivating a smaller number of truly exceptional minds.
So what does this all mean in practice? Think of it like this. The government is currently running a massive fast food franchise, right? They just want to churn out as many cheap uniform degrees as possible to hit a daily sales target and look good on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Dr. Kido is saying, no, you need to shut down the franchise and build a Michelin star kitchen.
I love that comparison.
You meticulously cultivate top-tier talent. The absolute numbers might be lower, sure, but the quality of the output is what actually shifts the global paradigm.
But here's the catch. To keep those Michelin star chefs in your kitchen, you have to guarantee their treatment. You cannot pay them fast food wages.
Right.
You have to establish international standard salaries that actually exceed what regular corporate researchers make. You have to pay them what they are worth globally, or the free market will just pull them away to the US or Europe.
But pay alone isn't enough, right? Like if you pay them well but stick them in a rigid hierarchical lab where they can't pursue their own ideas, they're still going to stagnate.
Absolutely. Which leads to her next critical point. Structural mobility. A researcher must be able to move fluidly between a university lab, a corporate R&D department, and a public institution.
Because in Japan currently, leaving academia for industry is often a one-way street.
Right. If you leave, you can't come back. Creating high mobility means a researcher can follow the best funding and the most exciting projects without destroying their long-term career trajectory.
And if we have that mobility, we can start diversifying the paths for these PhDs. We have to stop thinking a PhD only belongs in a corporate lab or, as a university professor.
We need these brilliant analytical minds working as public policy analysts, right?
Yeah.
Steering government tech strategy.
Yes. We need them in international organizations or acting as elite technical research staff across totally different industries.
And if you build that environment, high pay, high mobility, diverse career paths, you actually solve the international student problem as well.
Oh, because they'll actually want to stay.
Exactly. You stop being a stepping stone and you start retaining global talent. And Dr. Kido points to a very specific, proven model for this, the LOTUS program. Oh man, I was absolutely blown away by the numbers on this program. Let's break this down for you guys listening.
So the LOTUS program was launched in 2024 by the Japan Science and Technology Agency, or JST. The goal is to bring top-tier Indian graduate students and postdocs into Japanese labs.
But wait, we just established that international students take Japan's funding and immediately leave. Why is LOTUS any different? How does this program prevent them from just taking the degree and hopping on a flight to California?
It's all about how the program is structured. It's not just handing out a blind scholarship. It's an incredibly strategic partnership based on mutual need.
Okay, unpack that.
So India has a massive surplus of world-class theoretical and software talent from elite institutions like the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology.
Right. They have the absolute best minds for AI and data science, but they sometimes lack access to cutting-edge physical laboratories for things like advanced materials or biotechnology.
And Japan has the exact opposite problem. Japan has massive, deeply funded physical lab infrastructure in chemistry and material science, but they have a severe shortage of AI and software talent due to their demographic decline.
It's basically two puzzle pieces snapping together perfectly.
Yeah.
Japan funds the actual research, up to 3 million yen per project, and India covers the travel costs. But the key mechanism here is that it establishes joint labs and ongoing cross-border corporate partnerships.
So Japan isn't just buying a student for a few years. They are integrating Japanese R&D pipelines directly into India's top talent pools.
Exactly. The intellectual property flows both ways, which creates this sticky ecosystem that researchers genuinely want to stay engaged with.
And the growth of this program just totally proves the concept. They went from funding 50 projects in their first year to 1,000 projects in just 2 years.
They had 1,600 applicants for those spots.
Wow. It just proves that when policy is targeted, mechanism-driven, and actually mutually beneficial, you get explosive growth. You don't need arbitrary bureaucratic quotas when the system actually functions correctly.
And to support all of this, the final piece of the puzzle is funding reform. The government absolutely has to stop incentivizing the proliferation of those temporary, specially appointed ghost jobs.
Right, the temp jobs.
Yeah. The ministry needs to alter how they award grants so that funding shifts toward long-term, stable environments where researchers can actually settle down, do deep work, and live a normal life without fear of unemployment next year.
It's just so clear when you step back and look at the whole picture. Japan's decline in global research power isn't caused by a lack of PhDs. It is caused by the lack of a system that values, protects, and actually utilizes the PhDs they already have.
Exactly. Genuine reform means listening to the researchers on the ground, like Dr. Kido.
Yeah.
It means understanding the mechanisms of innovation, not just a bunch of bureaucrats in a room setting a 20,000-person quota.
Yep.
If you don't fix the vessel, pouring more water into it won't help. It will just leak out faster.
That is the perfect way to summarize it. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. We talked a lot today about that fatal corporate equation, right? The idea that cost cutting is prized over innovation value.
The idea that a brilliant mind is viewed as an expensive disruption rather than an asset.
Exactly. So take a hard look at your own workplace or your own industry. Are you, or is your company, inadvertently suppressing brilliant minds just because your organizational structure is designed to reward saving pennies over generating breakthroughs?
It's a really important question to ask.
It is. Like, how much hidden PhD level potential is sitting in the cubicle next to you being totally wasted right now just because their ideas or their background don't fit neatly into a standard HR spreadsheet?
It's a chilling thought, honestly.
It really is, but recognizing it is the very first step toward building your own Michelin star kitchen.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.